Hello, folks, and welcome to an audio recording. I am Jeremy, aka Captain Subpar, and yes, you may be surprised to see that this is just an audio recording. I do not have a toy review for you today. So, the reason behind this is that I decided a while ago that I wanted some extra time to talk about topics in Power Rangers that either I feel like we could have gone in depth on the podcast, or maybe I had more to say after the fact. I thought about stuff and oh, maybe I could talk about this too. Or maybe it's just topics that we aren't talking about on the podcast because, we do comic reviews, we do episode reviews, but sometimes there are other topics. And the funny thing this time is that I had a different topic that I wanted to talk about first. But another topic came up, and I was like, you know what? This has to be the first episode. Oh, and by the way, when I say podcast, I mean no pink spandex. I think you know that by now with me. Been around for a long time, but just need to throw that out there. There may be a few people that just watch the toy reviews. That would surprise me, but hey, it could happen. Anyway, so as far as these episodes go, there's no release schedule and there's no specific length per episode. It's just I'm going to talk about a topic, and then when I get bored or when I feel like I'm rambling like a crazy person, I'm going to hit stop and I'm going to post it. And that's all we really have for that, I guess. So as far as today goes, as you can possibly tell by the thumbnail, I'm going to talk about the news that Hasbro and Paramount are starting with another movie. They decided to go with another movie. Now I'm going to look at the article right here and read a little bit from it. This article was posted on The Hollywood Reporter on Friday the 13th. Ooh, geez, Friday the 13th. Anyway, by Boris Kitt. It says Power Rangers reboot in the works with creator of It's the End of the Fucking World. The show's actually called The End of the Fucking World. There's no it's, but good job, guy. Anyway, so the guy in charge is Jonathan Entwistle. Now, for those who don't know, this show is on Netflix, and it has a very sort of morose sense of humor. It's kind of a downer show. It has a lot of great reviews out there. I'm personally a big fan of it, but I also know it's the type of show that isn't for everyone. So, there's a bit of a mixed bag there, and when you look at that type of person, that type of show, and you say, why are they in charge of a Power Rangers reboot? I don't know. I mean, he can write a kid's voice, a teenager's voice pretty well, and that is Power Rangers at its core, so that could be important. And it is important to also note that this show is an adaptation of a graphic novel, so it would be much like with Power Rangers. It's their source material, and he's turning it into something consumable. Beyond that, there isn't a lot more information in this article. It just says Entwistle is in early negotiations to direct a new feature project that would reboot the title. And again, even though he's the director, I said he has the voice down. He's not the writer. It looks like the writer right now is Patrick Burley, who wrote the upcoming Peter Rabbit 2, The Runaway script. So, who knows? And again, Allspark Pictures from Hasbro. They're working with Paramount to release this movie. And it does say that the story at this point in time would involve time travel elements that bring the kid back to the 1990s. Brings the kids there. So boy, there's a lot to work with on that. And the thing I wanted to talk about most, or at least to start this discussion, and I say discussion where I'm just talking to you, is that I've seen a lot of backlash about this. I've seen two important points. One is I've seen a lot of people retroactively clowning on the 2017 movie, which doesn't really sit well with me. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that the 2017 movie was some perfect work of art. Although if you listen to No Pink Spandex, you know that we sat around with Black Nerd Andre and talked about this movie for must have been 3, 4, 5 hours. It was a long discussion. And there were a lot of great things about that movie. I thought it was a fantastic cast. I thought they added a lot to Zordon's backstory. The actual Zord battle was pretty amazing, and it just actually lets you see these characters as the kids that they are. The stuff with Billy was obviously a standout, and the stuff with Trini, his autism and her not really being completely understanding of her own sexuality. So there's a lot of good stuff in that movie. I think it was a fantastic film, and we've seen people from that movie go on to bigger stuff. Naomi Scott has been in the Charlie's Angels movie, which granted did flop, but she's also Princess Jasmine. And Dacre Montgomery was a main character in the recent season of Stranger Things. Ludi Lin was already popular overseas, so... And Becky G, she's a famous singer, so there's a lot going on there. They had a very good basis. Now, as far as what was wrong with that movie, they definitely made some missteps. I think that the costumes, while unique and innovative, and I did like them for the most part, still didn't necessarily scream Power Rangers. And I think they could have had some more civilian fights would have been important, focusing on them actually, as kids doing stuff like that, or even as Rangers. Because once they fully morphed in the movie, which again happened way too late, there was only one very quick ground fight before we moved on to Zord battle stuff. So what I'm trying to say is with the franchise is I think they had the material to make a second movie. And I think it's something that would have drawn at least the people who watched the first movie back in, and could have drawn more in if they would have cast a wider net with the appeal factor. And the appeal factor is important because the second issue that I've seen a lot has been, and I'm not going to name names, I'm not going to call people out on an individual basis, but I have seen former actors from the show, specifically people from the early days, and I've seen a lot of fans get up in arms being like, you know what, this movie... The 2017 movie sucked, and the reason why it sucked is because they needed Jason and Tommy and Billy and Zach and Kimberly. They needed all the original actors in there, and if they had the original actors, they would have drawn in more people. And I'm not going to watch this new movie because they're still not caring about the old actors. And stuff like this really just makes me slap my head in disbelief. Because, are you even possibly considering the actual fans, like the actual people that would be fans of this franchise in the future? I hate to remind people of this. I don't feel like I should have to remind people of this, but Power Rangers is over 26 fucking years old. These actors that you're talking about, and bless their hearts, there's a lot of nice people out there that were old school Rangers, but these people, these originals, every single one of them is pushing 50 years old. 50! They have no business being Power Rangers in any sort of serious sense. They just don't, okay? And here's the thing, is if that's your concern, then all you care about is yourself. That's just, I'm sorry, but it is an incredibly selfish mindset to be like, we need the original Rangers in here. It's a bunch of crap. Because, so, the only people who care about the old school Rangers are the hardcore fans. The hardcore fans are, like me, people in their 30s. Okay? People that are not in the target demographic. And when I say target demographic, I mean the target demographic of the kids show, which is around the ages of 6 to 10, or even the coveted demographic that everybody is after, which is adult males ages 18 to 35. I'm sorry, but unless you're on the very back end of that target demographic, then you don't really care that much about the original actors. They don't draw you in. And again, I have to keep saying this, but this is not a knock on any of these actors. But names like David Yost, Jason David Frank, Austin St. John, Amy Jo Johnson, Walter Jones have absolutely zero cachet in Hollywood. People do not know who they are. The biggest thing in their career, still to this day, is Power Rangers. They've all gone on to do some cool stuff. Lots of cool stuff. They all have careers. Some of them aren't even actors anymore. But, like, they're just the Power Rangers. So you're not going to sell a movie to a wide audience on Jason David Frank. You're just not. It's just not going to happen. And I think that's one of the biggest things when it comes to fans is that they're incredibly insular. Like, just because a name like JDF means a lot to you, it doesn't necessarily mean it means a lot to everybody else. Like, yeah, Tommy was a huge part of your life, and that is awesome, and I appreciate that. I think it's cool that he was a positive influence on you, and you should hold on to that positive influence. But you shouldn't think that Joe Schmo down the street, who maybe saw Power Rangers the first season when he was a kid, cares that much about that actor. They just don't. You have to cast people that are going to appeal to a younger audience. Like, that's just the long and short of it. And the fact that people don't understand that is just one of the most frustrating things, and it's one of the reasons why this franchise fails to grow long term. So the other thing I want to go over too is I want to get back to the costumes. So one of the things I think that Power Rangers could use from other franchises is they need to look at the costumes and they need to come up with something in between. So while the movie costumes from 2017 were really, really cool, at their core, they still didn't super feel like Power Rangers. Now, when I think of a good example, I would look to the Marvel Universe and look to, say, a Captain Marvel or a Spider-Man or even a Captain America, where their costumes aren't the spandex costumes that you would see in the comic book. Spider-Man's is closer to that, but it's not the same. And Captain America, even though he's gotten away from it in the comic book, he used to wear, the tight blue spandex with the little wings on his ears, and he just doesn't do that anymore. It still looks, it's still a tight costume, but it's more tactical. Even Spider-Man's costume, it has, little gadgets in it, and the material is obviously thicker. It's more of a Teflon rubbery sort of stuff, but it still at its core looks like a Spider-Man costume. And I think Power Rangers could do a lot with that. And it doesn't necessarily have to be costumes that look exactly like the MMPR costumes, but they could be fairly close. They could look pretty identifiable to them if necessary. And so I think that's just an important thing to remember, is that there is a shifting sense in what is acceptable visually, but you still have to have some sort of remembrance to what it's supposed. It needs to be identifiable, is what I'm trying to say. It's from a distance. Someone needs to look at it and say unequivocally, easy word for me to say, that's Power Rangers. And we have gone away from that. Now, the other thing that I really think is important to talk about is this time travel aspect of this whole thing. Okay? Now, it says the Rangers are going to go to the 1990s, and that does worry me on a certain level, but it also kind of makes me think of some options. I personally don't want a film where it's just like we're in the 1990s and we're just here to clown on the 90s. We're just here to be like, oh, remember the Walkmans? That was cool. Or, stuff like that. Or, hey, we didn't all have cell phones back then. That sort of stuff. Because I look at, for me, a good example is the Boom comics, is that it has this nice meshing of the two ideas together. All of the Rangers still look like the Rangers from the 90s, but their clothes are updated. They have updated technology, but they still act the same way they would have back then. It's just basically taking the people and transporting them to modern day, but treating them the same way. And that is a good way to go about it if you'd like to. I will, however, make a compromise. Now, hear me out. These are just some weird ideas bouncing around in my head when it comes to this time travel thing. And this is something I touched on in the podcast. Is I think you can utilize this time travel well if you don't make it the crux of your story, and you could actually use the time travel as your sort of Easter egg to the old school fans that you care about so much, supposedly. So let's say you send one or two Rangers back in time, and they could be kids of past Rangers. Now, who would I use? The Tommy, Catherine, JJ thing, that's fine, but I would go a little outside of the box, and I would say a kid that belongs to Adam and Tanya would be really nice, and a kid that belongs to Kimberly and Skull. People always go up in arms about the Kimberly and Skull thing, but I think it is the most fun pairing you could possibly have. And when I say Kimberly and Skull, I do not mean Spike. Again, no offense to the actor, blah, 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 blah. No, not Spike. Spike's not a Ranger. But let's say those two travel back in time. How cool would it be to see, let's say, the son of Skull and Kimberly actually have to watch his dad be his mom's bully in high school? It would just blow his mind. It would be a really, really cool thing to see. And if you really want to, you could have like a quick scene where you've got these 5 new Rangers, they're doing their thing, but for whatever reason, one of these old school Rangers, like Kimberly, is like, we're back in the present day, and she's like, Skull, hold my purse, or hold our other kid who's still a child. I've got some business to take care of. It's morphin' time. Then we get some pterodactyl action. She gets a quick little fight in, blah, 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 and then she's out, okay? And that's the important thing I need to stick to, is if you're going to use these old school Rangers in any meaningful way, and again, you don't have to. You do not have to do this. And as much fun as this idea is to me, maybe it is better if you just leave this all on the cutting room floor. But if you do use them, it has to be incredibly sparingly. You have to be able to know when to let go of that sort of stuff. And that reminds me of a trailer that I just saw recently, and that's the trailer for the new Ghostbusters movie. And that new Ghostbusters movie went over like gangbusters with fans. I know I really enjoyed it. I know a lot of people that really enjoyed it. And you know what's really cool about it? Is that it's its own thing. It talks about the original Ghostbusters. It shows the car. It has elements of the original Ghostbusters there, but it's a completely new cast doing their own thing. And I think that's what differentiates it from the Ghostbusters movie a couple years ago. And some people will say it's, the backlash from the all-female cast, which definitely has some merit. I'm not going to put that down in the slightest. But one of the problems I had with that movie, that I know a lot of people had with it, was that it just felt like it was just trying to be an updated take on the original Ghostbusters. Like, it didn't feel like it was treading too much new territory. It was just like, remember that thing you liked? We're just going to slap a new coat of paint on it, which is something that Power Rangers as a television show has done in recent years with Samurai and Megaforce and Dino Charge and Ninja Steel, is that in a lot of ways, it just tried to be MMPR. And you don't want to do that in 2019. This is a point that I have talked about a million times, both personally and on the podcast and friends and whatever, is that children's television has evolved. The movie-making process has evolved. Anything that is consumable to a large audience has evolved. We've come to a point where you can make some sort of hybrid material that appeals to kids, appeals to adults, appeals to everyone, can find something to like in it. Be it a cartoon like a Steven Universe that has adult themes but has these vibrant colors and these fun relationships, or be it a movie like this new Ghostbusters, is that you have to be able to live in the modern world. Pretending like it's 1993 does everyone a disservice. It retrogrades the actors. It makes you think like you're a dummy. It doesn't try to stretch itself. It doesn't try to do anything unique. Like, just look at sitcoms from the 80s or 70s or 60s. The stuff that was on prime time in sitcoms is stuff that wouldn't even make the cut on a Disney Channel sitcom nowadays. That is just for kids. Its humor was that weak and pedestrian, but at the time, that was cutting edge, but it's not anymore. That's what's important, and that's what we have to remember. Now, I do have one final point that I want to get into. This actually isn't taking as long as I thought it was going to. Let me see, what am I at? I'm at like 20 minutes. So, And you probably heard my mouse clicking there. But the one last point that I really want to talk about is these actors from the past. I'm trying to find the right way to word it here. And the way that they've approached this. And I'm going to be very blunt with people on this, okay? I am all for these old actors getting together and making fun new projects. I've promoted these projects before. I think they could be a ton of fun, and I understand crowdfunding them and making awesome stuff for the old school fans. But this is also a point that leads to why I think it's silly to focus so much on trying to get the old actors back for the new movie. Like, we gotta know, if Hasbro cares about the fans, then they're gonna get the old school actors, and if they don't, then they just don't understand Power Rangers. Like, guys, you have tried to do Kickstarters and other crowdfunded campaigns in the past with all these old school Rangers, and you have gotten mixed results at best. Nothing has ever actually been made as far as like a movie goes. We've gotten some material out there, but things being funded is very, very dicey. The most recent one was the White Dragon thing that starred JDF, and it looked like he was going to try to have his daughter starring in it as well, but they tried to make this White Dragon project with Bat in the Sun, and for whatever reason, you can blame scripting or the level of prizes they were offering. Not prizes, what is it? I don't know what the word is. But that's the backer offers they were giving or whatever it was, but they didn't hit their goal. They didn't even really come close to hitting their goal. And so I can sit here and I can look at this campaign not hit its goal, and then you're going to turn around and tell me that the thing Hasbro needs to do, the thing Paramount needs to do in order to make a new Power Rangers movie viable is to have the original actors? Based on what? Like, the 2017 movie, people label it a bomb because it cost $100 million to make and it grossed $142 million. So it still made $42 million. It made almost half of its budget back. But if that's called a bomb, like, what makes you possibly think that you have enough fans out there paying their ticket that is going to move the needle? That having all of those, having the old school Rangers have prominent parts, if not be the only actual Rangers themselves, if that's going to be like your crux of your argument, then I'm sorry, but the money's not there. You have no proof of concept. You have nothing that would make anyone believe that is the ticket. That getting a bunch of almost 50-year-olds to be your Rangers is somehow the right way to reboot a franchise. No, you don't reboot a franchise by putting in the old stuff. You reboot a franchise by putting in new stuff and paying homage to the old stuff. Homage does not mean Tommy and Jason and Billy and Zach, the actual actors, are the Rangers. Doesn't mean that. Does not now, does not ever mean that. So I think people just need to take a more realistic approach to this. And the other thing that's interesting is that, like, beyond the cameos I mentioned, there is room for these old school actors. The thing we talked about on the podcast that I want to bring up again is Netflix. The cool thing about Netflix is that they've done some amazing cartoons, and cartoons are your ticket. Like, you can get these old actors and have them be voice actors. Oh my gosh, one of them, Johnny Young Bosch, is one of the most famous voice actors in the world. He's Bash the Stampede. He's Broly. After they got rid of Vic Mignogna, the sexual predator. Yeah, I'm going to say it. He's a sexual predator. But they got rid of that, okay? Like, they have this talent. Like, you could create an amazing cartoon, a fantastic cartoon that, you could have it set back in the 1990s. You could have it like the Boom comic where it's set today, but it's the original characters, them voicing their own characters. Like, you could do all of that sort of stuff. There's a lot of options out there for them, but that is a lower budget It is for fewer eyeballs. It's something that has lower bars of success to keep going. Like, that is a great idea for them. A great idea for them is not putting them in the movie, putting all your eggs in that basket. It's just not. Like, you have to understand where we are at this point in time. All of us who love the Power Rangers as kids, we're adults. You know, and we're not even adults in college. We've been adults for a while. A lot of people our age have kids that are in the target demographic of Power Rangers, if not older than that by now. So to think that the way to draw them in, the way to get this going is with the old actors is just, it's bullshit. Like, that's the long and short of it. And I think that's all I really wanted to say on this topic, guys. And like I said before, I really hope you enjoyed this. As far as the next one, I do think I'm going to have another audio with a still picture baby's first Photoshop picture. I know it doesn't look that good, guys. I'm sorry. I really am not good at this sort of stuff. And I don't want to pay money for a program. So if you got any suggestions on how to make cool thumbnails, I'm down for it. Like, I'm willing to get some advice. But that's me on a tangent. I hope you like this. I hope you liked my raw approach of just being 100% honest, throwing my ideas out there. If you have any comments, I would love to hear them. I would love for you to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Hit the like button. All that sort of garbage that you shouldn't need to say if you're a YouTuber nowadays. But I mean, I don't even count as a YouTuber. I get like 5 views on some of my videos, so it doesn't really matter. But you know what I'm trying to say. So until the next audio rant, until the next toy review, you guys know me. I'm Jeremy, aka Captain Subpar, saying to you forever and always, thanks for listening. Didn't see that coming, did ya?